Welcome back. After. The past hangs between them as Will makes supper, chopping aubergine and chorizo in a silence, made somehow more oppressive by the chatter of the Radio 4 announcer. Hannah tries and fails to think of what to say, and in the end, she retreats to the living room, where she pulls out her laptop and opens her emails. She deleted the Gmail app from her phone in a panic after her mother's call came through, not wanting to be ambushed by notification pings on her walk home. And now she's more than a little afraid of what will be waiting for her, but she knows that leaving it would be worse. At bedtime, with nothing else to distract her, she will lie there wondering what's lurking in her inbox, until eventually she'll crack and log back in on her phone. And then whatever she finds, whatever new revelation, dangling lead, or a fresh attempt to manipulate her into responding, will set her pulse spiking and her adrenaline pumping, driving the possibility of sleep so far away that she will be awake all night, nauseous with apprehension, refreshing and Googling April's name in a kind of sick terror. She knows that's how it will go down because it's what happened before. Daily, more than daily messages in her first few months and years after April's death. The constant, numbing flood of beseeching, badgering, beleaguering requests that made her shocked and bruised by the national obsession with April's death had triggered. As the court case concluded, the requests slowed. First they came weekly, and then, as she and Will managed to slip beneath the surface of everyday life, camouflaging themselves in a reassuring, boring miniature of accountants' courses, house buying, money worries, and all the other mundane clutter of daily existence, they became more and more sporadic. Now, she is contacted only rarely and almost never by phone, not since they got rid of the landline and Hannah changed her mobile number. It still happens though. Every time John Neville's name rears up in the press, every time there's an appeal by Neville's legal team, or someone publishes a book, or a new podcast is launched. And it's taken this long for her to learn avoidance is not the way to deal with it. No, it's better to do it now. Get it out of the way. Allow herself to calm down before bed. But to her surprise and relief, there are only 3 unread emails. One is from her mom, sent earlier this afternoon, with the subject line, "Call me." It precedes their phone call, so she deletes it. The second is just an overdue notice from the library, and she marks it unread. The third is from an email address she doesn't recognize, with the subject header, "A question." Her heart rate is already accelerating even before she has clicked it, and the first line confirms her fears. Dear Hannah, we've never met, but allow me to introduce myself. My name is Geraint Williams, and I'm a reporter with The Daily. It's enough. She doesn't need to read anymore. She takes off her glasses, letting the screen go fuzzy and unreadable, then clicks Move to Request and watch the email disappear. Afterwards, she sits there holding her glass in one hand and her phone in the other, staring at the blank screen. Her fingers are suddenly ice cold and she pulls her jumper down over her hands to try to warm them. She can feel her pulse running sickeningly fast and shallow, and she wonders, in a kind of detached way, what the stress is doing to the baby. They're very tough, she hears her mother's voice in her head, reassuring, robust. Women give birth in war zones, for goodness sake. Are you okay? The voice comes from behind her and she jumps, even as her conscious brain is registering Will's presence. He squeezes into the armchair beside her, put his arms around her, and she shifts and settles into his lap. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I didn't mean to go all stiff under lip on you. I need to process it a bit. She leans into his chest, feeling the muscles in his arms flex as he wraps himself around her. There's something about his strength and heft that's inexpressibly reassuring in a kind of unreasoning way. It shouldn't matter that Will is taller and broader and stronger than she is. She had gone far beyond fearing John Neville as a physical threat, even before her mother's call. But somehow it does matter, and his physical presence is more comforting than any number of soothing words. She curls into him, her forehead on his chest, feeling his breath on her parting and the heat on him, warming her still frozen fingers as if reading her thoughts. He speaks. God, your hands are like ice. Come here. He takes them in his hand and puts them firmly up under his shirt, shuddering for a moment as her cold fingers connect with the warm, naked skin over his ribs, but then relaxing into her touch as the first chill subsides. How are you always so hot? She manages with a shaky laugh, and he rests his chin on top of her head, stroking her hair with one hand. I don't know. Years of shit centraling heat at Kearney, maybe? Oh, sweetheart, I'm really sorry this has to come now. I know how hard this is for you. She nods, pressing her forehead to his collarbone, staring into the warm darkness of the hollow between their bodies. He knows. Perhaps he is the only person who really does, who understands the complication maelstrom of feelings Neville's death has stirred up. Because on the surface, this should be good news. John Neville is gone forever. And long term, it probably is for the best. But short term, this is going to mean a flurry of interest, a shattering of their hard-won illusion of normalcy. Just when she and Will should be concentrating on the new life they were bringing into the world, not thinking about the one they both saw snuffed out. She remembers the days and months after April's death, the searing, relentless searchlight of media obsession, the feeling that something appalling had happened, and all she wanted was to hide in the shadows and rock back and forth as she tried to come to terms with what she had seen. But wherever she ran, whatever she did, the searchlight kept seeking her out. Miss Jones, a quick comment, please. Hannah, could we have an interview? 5 minutes, I promise. For 10 long years, ever since the trial, in fact. I thought I saw something move over there. Let me get back. For 10 long years, ever since the trial, in fact, she's been hiding from that spotlight. For 10 years, April's death had been the first thing she thinks about when she wakes up and the last thing at night. And she knows it's been that way for Will too. They have spent the whole of their relationship with the shadow of April's memory looming over them. But these last few days, with the baby and everything else, she has allowed herself not to forget exactly, because she could never do that, but to feel like April's death was no longer the defining part of her life. And although she and Will have never discussed it in so many words, she's pretty sure it's been the same for him. Now, with Neville's death and an inevitable media flurry, it will be back to changing their numbers and screening their messages. Hannah will find herself looking twice at customers coming into the bookshop. At Carter and Price, the accountancy firm where Will is a junior partner, the new receptionist will be told what happened, instructed to ask a few more questions before routing calls and setting up appointments. It's been hard for him too, harder in some ways, though he would never say so. But it's no coincidence that he followed her here to Scotland, a country with its own legal system, its own newspaper, a place almost as far away from Oxford as it was possible to get without leaving the UK altogether. She remembers the gray September day 8 years ago when he walked into the bookshop. She was helping a customer choose a birthday present, debating the merits of the new Michael Palin version versus the latest Bill Bryson. Something, a noise, or a movement behind her had made Hannah turn, and there he was. For a moment, she had lost the power of speech. She had simply stood there, the customers rattling happily on about Rick Stein, while Hannah's heart beat and beat and beat with a kind of fierce joy. 3 months later, they moved in together. 2 years later, they were married. It's strange. Will is the best thing that ever happened to her, and yet they are bound together by the worst events of her life. It shouldn't work, but it does. She would not have survived this without him. She knows that. Now she lifts her head, looks him in the face, and runs her finger down his cheek, trying to read his own feelings beneath his concern for her. Are you okay? I'm fine, he said reflectively. And then, not fine exactly. He's struggling. She can see that. It's been a bone of contention their whole relationship. His tendency to shut himself away from her, to pretend everything is fine just when he's closest to falling apart. The worst things are, the more stressed he is at work, the more worried he is about money, the less he says, talk to me. It's been her cry for almost 10 years, and he's still figuring out how to deal with the vulnerability of opening himself up when his entire childhood was about not showing weakness. I'm okay, he says at last, or I will be, when I've had time to process the news, but I've not had to deal with it in the same way you did. I didn't see. He stops, begins again. I haven't had to go through everything you did. She nods because it's true. Yes, Will was there, and yes, April meant just as much to him, maybe even more. But he didn't see what Hannah saw that night, and he didn't have to spend the next weeks, months, even years going over and over and over what happened. First with the police, then with the prosecution lawyers, and finally in court in the witness box. But it didn't stop, even after the conviction, because the fact is that the case against John Neville rested on her evidence, and that's something no one has ever allowed her to forget. Will is speaking again now, his voice sounding softer and deeper than usual, with her head resting on his chest. Maybe in a way, this is for the best. Hannah doesn't speak at first. Why now, is what she's thinking. Why now, when they should be so happy, so wrapped up in each other and in the baby they have made? She shouldn't have to be dealing with the retrospectives and newscast specials at all, but especially not now. But then she thinks of the years stretching out ahead of them, filled with a never-ending parade of newspaper articles and appeals and requests for comments, and she knows Will is right. And yet, why doesn't this feel right? The BBC said he was preparing another appeal, she says. Appeal. The word feels sick with dread in her mouth. I don't think I could have taken that. I just don't want all the renewed interest. But you're right. When this is over, she stops, almost too fearful to voice it. Instead, it's Will who says the word, his voice firm as he tightens his arms around her. When this is over, it'll really finally be over. And for the first time, Hannah allows herself to believe that might be true. Okay, so that's the end of that chapter. Okay, so it was her evidence that put John away. Why her evidence? And when they put her, they put it in italicized, that word, y'all know what I'm saying, font. And I'm like, her. So did she really have something to do? Did she set up John perhaps some kind of way? Oh, I guess we're going to have to keep going to find out. But I shall see you in the next chapter. Bye for now.